All right. We're going to give everybody just a second to log in. Okay. Well, we've got a few people logged in. I want to welcome you all today. Real quickly, before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and go over some housekeeping items as you're logging in. We are excited to have you all here, and we love to hear from our audience. So if you have questions throughout our presentation or the podcast style webinar that we're doing today, feel free to click on the Q&A button at the bottom. You can ask questions throughout. Also, feel free to use the chat function if you want to add some dialogue with the other members that are watching in, or if you have other questions, you can log in there. I will hold all the questions until the very end of the discussion and ask the presenters your questions. If you have any questions regarding the format, or Zoom or whatever, by this time, everybody has Zoom pretty well figured out. But if you're having any challenges with Zoom, let me know. You can reach me directly through the chat function. This event will be recorded, so you'll be able to access it through our website, and we'll also be uploading it to our podcast. So our podcast is Be a Builder of Choice. So you can join us on Spotify, and it's also available on Apple. So with that, I want to welcome everyone to our Builder of Choice series. Becoming a builder of choice means a builder has created a relationship with their trade partners, their employees, and their customers that makes them the builder everyone wants to work with, giving them an edge above their competition. The Builder of Choice series will continue to cover topics that help you become a builder of choice. I'm Emma Jane here with Ed Hauck and Keith Schneider. Keith and his team founded an ERP to help trades streamline their business. Today, we'll discuss issues of price escalation over the last few years and how builders and trade partners can work together to right-size their costs so everyone wins. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. I want, before we dive right in, I want to just give Ed and Keith a quick opportunity to introduce themselves so that you know a little bit about their background before they get started. So Keith, will you go ahead and introduce yourself because you're brand new to our series?
Absolutely. Oh, it's a pleasure to be with everyone, to ask to be joined today. I've been running Sierra Data Systems for the last 27 years, and the company is really focused around helping trade contractors manage and maintain cost control in their environment. So we have the distinct privilege of being in the backyard with Emma Jane and the team, and so we're right here in Colorado with them. And so we just recently got introduced, and we're invited to be a part of this. So it's a pleasure to be on today.
Thank you so much, Keith. And Ed, quick introduction from you. I think most everybody that's on here today live with us knows you, but there's going to be some people who haven't met you before. So give us a quick introduction.
I saw the list, and I know almost all the builders on there. So my name is Ed Hauck. I've been with Chuck and Emma for a little bit over 10 years, I think. Met Chuck back in '92 and have been implemented everything him and him have preached over the years. So how's that for short?
Thank you. And Chuck and Emma are the founders of our organization, Shinn Consulting and Builder Partnerships. They have been in the industry since before it even was an industry, a formalized industry. They started back in the 60s with NAHB and worked in the University of Denver and have created tremendous material and have built their own home building company at one point in time and used it as a laboratory to make sure the things that we talk about today actually can work. So we're very honored and blessed to have them as our leaders and our founders. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started with our discussion today. So let's start off by talking a little bit about how we got here. As far as price escalation is concerned, let's talk a little bit about how we got here. And I want to get both perspectives. And that's why we've invited Keith on here, because he works directly with the trade partners. And in discussion with him, he's able to add a little bit more to this topic than what we as builders have. So I'm going to go ahead and start with Ed and then head over to Keith, and you guys can have some dialogue on this.
Yeah, so we met Keith just a few months ago on our call to talk about this. I was really intrigued that Keith has a system. Almost all the builders are on this call are on some kind of an ERP system. It's some sort of job cost system. And I've really never thought about how our trades manage their job costs. Keith and I discussed a lot about how his system helps with helps the trades, and it really mirrors almost everything we do. The big discussion and everybody on everybody's plate right now is how we right size our costs. And I was really intrigued with from Keith's perspective how he can help do that. I mean, Keith, you want to tell us a little bit of what we talked about a couple of weeks ago on how, like, when we're trying to lower costs, I never realized that most of the trades we're talking to don't always have a job cost system. They're just kind of, this is how much they spent per month, and at the end of the month, that's all their managing systems. The Keith actually helps trades manage down to parts and pieces. And I was pretty amazed of the cost of material and the cost of labor and how much Keith's system can track that. So Keith, you want to tell us a little bit about the challenge the trade partners are facing now with labor and materials?
Yeah, absolutely. So most trade contractors, their system of choice is an accounting package coupled with millions of spreadsheets. I mean, that really comes down to how costs are managed. So therefore, one of the challenges they have is to be able to look at a centralized bill of goods across an entire, either a builder, a project, and really see what costs go into building that home. Really costs are broken down into two buckets, which are material and labor. And if you were to ask most trades what their bucket is, how much do they spend in labor over how much they spend in material, that in and of itself is a challenging question. So really the focus is from the time that you bid something all the way to the time that you deliver it, and through the course of the action in that project, how prices move for you and how you're experiencing price change over the period of time.
So like I said, most trades don't really are not that detailed. So as right now, there's a significant portion of their budget is materials, correct?
Yeah, correct. If we take an example of, say, a mid-sized plumber doing 1,000 homes a year, they're going to be looking at about an 80% material cost and 20% labor cost.
Wow. And when we were talking, I really never realized how many parts and pieces a plumber's trying to manage. I told Keith, I have a plumber now that has a box truck full of bins, and he does bin management. Literally, he has piles and piles, bins and full of just fittings and whatnot. And when he's out, he just goes buys more. So, and Keith, you had told me that you up to 40% on just certain SKUs, correct?
Yeah, if you look at, for example, an average plumber, just count of items, unique pieces and parts they're going to put in can be up to 1,000 parts. Now that may be 400 line items, right? So we might be putting 10 half-inch elbows in, but at the end of the day, it's 1,000 total parts, 400 SKUs that they're managing uniquely in a job. And that's with a home that's not doing a lot of options. That's just a standard plan.
And you had said 20% of it's labor, correct?
Correct. 20% of it's labor. And, again, impacting labor for a trade is a lifetime adventure for them. How do I continually put labor costs accurately in front of my crews so they know what their goals are daily, so they can drive down on those costs? If we can reduce 2% of labor in a company, that's a big deal, but that's a committed effort on the behalf of a trade to get there. Some of the better opportunities is actually driving down material costs. The challenge is, do they know the material cost up front and they know how they're buying it? Right now in the market, if you look at perhaps this plumber, 50% of the overall cost are in their fixtures, and actually the other 50% is in their commodities. There's two primary cost categories that drive their overall cost of goods.
That's crazy. So we're always talking on the builder side, being the builder of choice. This is really how we help the trade contractor, the trade of choice. What can builders do to help the trade control costs? And at this point, we're trying to get all of our costs down. I mean, things have skyrocketed. We just had a builder group meeting last week. We're seeing some movement, but not a lot of movement in some of the cost categories. Aside from just taking their profit away, how can we help a trade control the cost and reduce our cost?
Great question. I think the biggest challenge in that is, working with trades that understand true cost. And really, I think the relationship's the most important thing. Building a relationship with the person that is both doing the senior estimator that's doing the estimates and knowing their methodology. Is their methodology like plans, and they're just going to look at a series of like plans and go, well, this looks like plan one and another project, that's what we're going to use as our cost basis, and that's how they're going to bid it. If that's the case, they don't have a baseline bill of materials to start with. So how they change in their prices, even from the time they bid it to the time they go out and walk the home and find out the parts and pieces that they thought were going to be a part of it have differed, that can all change. If you're building a relationship with that senior estimator, you know their methodologies, you can help them with their methodologies. Ultimately, we don't want trades bidding per square foot. We don't want them building per fixture. We want them bidding based upon a specific bill of materials. That gives you as a builder to work with them and understand, hey, if commodities haven't decreased, which they have, and we can talk about that, that's your greatest opportunity right now to go back and ask for price concession, because we know what material is moving in the market versus what material is not.
You know, I like that idea. I mean, we from everybody here at Shinn, we always preach unitized pricing, and right now we're just picking on this poor plumber, but not knowing the parts materials. And the other thing I was surprised with the other day when we were talking is, more often than not, we as the builders don't even know who is responsible for the pricing and the estimating in a large company. I like that idea. You know, in a small environment, I might be talking to my plumber, but he just doesn't really know the cost. His costs are just escalating every single month. So talk a little bit more about that relationship with who's tied in with the cost, how we build, and having good plans, and making sure we have that relationship with the right people and the operation.
Yeah, there's really three key people, and depending upon the side of the trade, some of them could share that same role, but the senior estimator is a key relationship to have. And I think deepening that relationship with the senior estimator, really go back to them and say, hey, we're looking to control cost. Could you give us some recommendation even on, change in bill of materials that would reduce our cost? Or really, where is the core of our cost? Is it in the fixtures? Is it in the commodities? What fixture prices could we drive down to reduce cost? But then all of that could happen in the bidding process. But if we don't know we have a purchasing manager that knows how to purchase commodities and or fixed materials on a strategic basis, you are not, as a builder, then getting the benefit of their understanding. So even building a relationship past the estimator and knowing the purchasing agent, how they purchase, how they think about the business, how they control material in and out of their warehouses, all of that is very key in helping control cost. And then the third person we always like to work with, again, does have impact on material costs, but obviously labor, is that field superintendent. That relationship's key, knowing they're running the most efficient field out there. And then on the material side, if there's waste, that waste has to come back to the warehouse, be accounted for. Next time that plan goes out, we're not going to send that additional waste out. We're going to minimize that waste, and we're going to drive down those material costs through proper labor management in the field. So those are the three people within a trade organization that you want to build great relationships with, and honestly, to help them in their success and their journey as a tradesman and running a trade business.
So I like that idea. I mean, there's two people that we as builders are usually working with on the trade side. One is the owner, because that's typically who's controlling our price to the street. The other person we're always after is whoever's running the job, the superintendent, because that's really driving, getting the labor on site. I like the idea of really getting down to the parts and pieces. There's no waste. Again, small volume plumber doing bin management versus all these unitized pricing. Your system actually tracks the parts, the pieces, and at some point in time, we discussed how we can tie that into commodities. Like I can do a deal with, maybe a fixture supplier or something, and maybe get some prices locked in. But you're dealing with a lot of commodities here with all your trades as well, aren't you?
Absolutely. So the total cost of the bill of materials for a plumber, for example, is 50% commodities, 50% fixtures. Those fixture costs are broken all the way from a tub to a faucet to a disposal, whatever it might be. that's a lot, ultimately the commodity market usually moves together. So every fitting you have, all of your pipe, typically you're going to see that all move together. So you're not pricing out individual parts and pieces. You do it as a percentage off of list, where effectively on your fixed materials, you have to go negotiate those. So if you're actually going in and you want to strategically build out a subdivision, are your highest cost fixtures being strategically bid by that senior estimator and that purchasing agent, so you can ensure that they're actually not just giving you shelf price today, but they've actually gone out and negotiated a future price. Commodity market, the best thing you can do on that is bulk buy for 90 days if your warehouse can accommodate it, and then you strategically buy as the commodity market moves.
So when COVID first happens, this is going back a little ways, and hopefully it's in our rearview mirror. I knew some of my larger trades, electrician, for example, was trying to bulk buy copper. I talked to the same electrician just recently. He told me he's in a much better position now and can cover costs for 90 plus days. Do you see the better trades using your system being able to cover costs for us for that type of a time period now?
Yeah, 90 days is a reasonable cost period. Most warehouses can't accommodate, and these trades can accommodate more than 30 days of inventory. So most of them buy to 30 days because of warehouse limitations. But negotiating things like advanced purchasing, where I can buy now, and warehouse it with my supplier until I can take custody of it, is certainly strategies that you want your trades to work out as well, so that you're not using up inventory space.
That's a good point. The other part that we as builders, and we talk about this in our seminars all the time, is really making sure we have very good job sites, well run, clean, ready to go, no dry runs. 20% is nothing to sneeze at, and you said that's how much the labor is part of a contract. So I know a lot of trades, they say they track the hours, they don't. They're really saying, I sent the guys out. In the last 2 years, our crews are substandard as far as quantity. Tell us about some ways we can do better at tracking the labor portion of this contract.
Well, obviously, if we work with builders where we can go straight down the street, it's a great thing, right? We want to go straight down the street. We want to move our crews from house to house. So if I get done today, I'm not just putting in 6 hours. I can finish my day. I can get on another house and I can get it started. So the more linear we have in our workflow, the better. But more importantly, with our trades, the way we're going to really drop from a 20% to perhaps get down to an 18% is if we're actually putting dollars in front of them. Hey, here's a house. In order to do this house, you have $600. Your crew today is a $70 an hour crew. We know what it should take to accomplish this. So we really try to make the data visible to our trade so that there's no question. It doesn't just be the crew lead. It's every employee on that crew. They want to know what their goals are every day. They want to be scheduled the night before. When I get there that day, I put my time to the lot and tasks that I'm performing services on. So that's how we make our crews as efficient as possible. And again, that goes back up to the head superintendent to make sure that all of the crews are being scheduled out properly to be the most efficient crews possible, and working with the builder to know what those dates and do we have a house ready to go.
You made a very important statement in there is, one, we have to know what the labor costs are. We always preach the schedule should be updated. If you're on a good schedule system, I want the trades to know what's going on and right size those schedules. One of the things that Keith had just mentioned is they're loading the trucks and delegating the crews the night before. So it's very important for us to have our schedules updated. My thing is I want them updated on the street by 3 o'clock our time, because in this case, you're already allocating those crews the day before, not the morning of.
Absolutely. Every crew, every night, and the systems that we use, 7 o'clock every evening, they get a list of everywhere they need to be, what their labor goals and budgets are for the following day. And unless that changes, that's where they're expected to be. The trucks are already loaded for the night before and ready to hit the job sites.
So another thing in that last segment there is the labor cost. One of the things that was an old school way of doing things, I was brought up this way, is we should contract for crew size and time. If I'm contracting for crew size and time, I'm really kind of backing into my labor side, aren't we?
Absolutely. Yeah, we use a labor distribution system whereby we configure a crew and we know they're a $70 an hour crew. Do we have 8 hours worth of work that for that $70 an hour crew for a combined workforce? So we want to make sure that every crew has at least 8 hours scheduled out for the day. Employees want to work, they want to be paid, and they don't want to be shorted on their time. So we make sure they have more than 8 hours scheduled every day to ensure that they have a full schedule ready to go.
So the way to get the best crews is really to have our jobs ready to go and make sure the best crews are there, getting their time in and maximizing and making money. So what you're describing here is if I need my trade to be as efficient as possible, if I've got any chance of getting them to work on my jobs as a builder of choice for less than somewhere else, correct?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Predictable schedules with predictable release schedules is really key. Last minute scrambles to find work for people where they're expecting to be somewhere and now they don't have work. Nobody wants to sit at home. So now we got to find homes that are ready and, they get moved over to a different project where they can be, efficient and get their full day in.
Good. We've been kind of just using the plumber as an example. Does this concept work for almost any trade?
Yeah, I use the plumber as an example because they have the most complex bill of
Yep.
materials that you can imagine. But no, absolutely. I mean, if you're managing any level of material or manpower, then really you should be bidding at the line item level, both materials and labor, and you should be tracking it. Our mantra is daily job costing. We don't want to wait till it hits accounting. We don't want it. We want a daily job costing. So both on materials and labor, both my office and the field should know exactly if they hit their numbers for the day. So, and it doesn't matter what the complexity of your bill of materials is. That's really the objective.
So, like I just never realized how many parts and pieces went into plumbing for a house. It just blows my mind. What are some other things that builders should think about when we say we're negotiating with the trades? I'm really trying to, especially one of my trades of choice. One of the things that we should ask the trade as we're trying to right size some of these costs, and really, I want to make sure the trade's making money. I want to make sure they're making fair profit, but I don't want to deal with the fluff. How do I get the fluff out and really start to help them right size my cost?
Yeah, that goes sort of back to some conversations we've had before, Ed, about this concept of open book. How much of an open book should the trades be? How much would the builder demand them to be an open book? If it is a partnership, how do you work at that? First there has to be systems in place where they can actually be an open book. But I think that's the key thing, is having the kind of relationship with your trade to say, hey, we're kind of lower cost. We really don't want to put you out to bid on this. Is there any movement? We know, if you know the trade well enough and you know where their costs are, is there any movement in the commodity market where we might be able to bring this down? Right now, I can tell you the commodity, if we look at the cost today between this time and last year was really the high point. It wasn't the beginning of COVID. It wasn't the middle of COVID. It was last September was really one of the high points in cost. Our fixture costs have not dropped, but our commodities have, and they've dropped to the tune of 8%. So if you have that knowledge and you can work with your trade to say, hey, listen, I know there's been an 8% reduction in the commodity market. I really want to work with you to see how we can drive some of these costs down. And I think just the knowledge of knowing where the market's at and knowing that the trade has that knowledge, it's an easy conversation to have. But if they have no understanding of their costs, it's immediately they're put on their heels, not knowing how to even answer the question.
So Keith, you, Emma Jane, and I talked about this when we talked, whatever it was last week. A lot of trades don't really like the open book. Some of my better trades over the year, Chuck always preaches there's lots of 80-20 rules. The one that we preach on the 80-20 rule is never give any trade or any supplier, anybody, 100% of your work. You could easily get yourself in big trouble if you do that. I've got a small volume trade who's trying to get more of my work, but they have the cost of doing business with the builder of choice is lower than cost of doing business with anybody else. I think it's really important to make sure that open book concept, what are they counting? Are they counting multiple trips? Are they counting trip charges? Are they counting waste? This is why I think you hit the nail on the head with some kind of an open book to get in there and figure out where's that waste and get it out. I know my larger volume trades absolutely track all this stuff. I love the way your system will track everything. Do you see builders being able to get with the trade and figure out how much waste they're carrying for? If you're a builder choice, I don't have trip charges, my plans are right, everything else. So do you see the better trades being willing to actually open up to a builder to get more work and get a fair price for the builder? And hopefully that's going to help me sell more homes.
No, absolutely. I think the component of open book really comes down to there's probably an immediate defense upon that of the trades because they just don't have the data to support any of it, right? So if you don't have the data, you're immediately defensive. But I think the reality of it is you want to know, we track every trip charge we do back for a builder, and we actually know why we did it. Did we do it because we're doing a favor for the builder? We track that. Are we doing a favor for another trade? Are we doing it because of our negligence? Or are we getting back charged? And do we know what back charges we're hitting? How efficient are builders with work orders, and do they pay timely, and do I have to fight on every work order? All of that is tracked and managed. So when there's the concept of having an open book, it's like, hey, we went back and did X amount of work for you last month. You hit us with this back charge. Can we talk about this? Because effectively we're doing a lot of favors for you. This back charge doesn't really seem fair. But again, if you're not tracking the data, it's hard to have that conversation. So I just think working with trades that have that discipline about tracking at that level just opens up better dialogue, and that's an easier conversation to have if everybody's on the same page in terms of tracking data and expectation about what you would receive back in that conversation.
Keith, I love that concept. Trip charges, as I was working with trades, try and get to understand why the number where it was, what can we get out of it. On a $15,000 number, working with one trade, he had trip charges in there, didn't know how many or what for. I'm an advocate. If I caused a problem, I should pay you for the problem. I like the fact that you can actually track that trip charge and why there was a trip charge.
Well, and it's interesting, if you incentivize your employees based upon performance, you put budgets out in front of them, they're not too excited about making that trip charge, right? Because now I got to go make a trip charge and it's hurting my budget. So we work with trades, with the teams in the field to say, hey, we're not going to hit you for this trip charge. We're going to reduce your budget because we're doing a favor for another trade or for the builder. So we want to make that transparent. We don't want guys driving all over the place just for the sake of, doing it. We don't want it to hurt their performance on a daily basis. So again, visibility to all of this is really important.
100% agree. So for everybody who's listening, keep in mind, everything Keith is preaching is really what Chuck and Em have been preaching for years from the trades perspective. Know all those costs, track the reasons. Like I said, as I was negotiating my trades in my old world, I told them I will pay for trip charges. There's no hot runs either. I'll pay for that. This is really how we start driving the cost down. Like you said, 20% of every dollar is the labor, and I got multiple trip charges in there. That cost starts to add up.
It does. Yeah. No,
so what, as builders, I'm going to transition to, from a trades perspective, we as builders, what can we do besides, assuming we're doing open book, we're having some identifying some labor, how many hours in a house, what can we do to be more efficient? What kind of information does the trade need to be better able to suit our needs and buy for the better builders?
Yeah, going back to sort of what we talked about earlier about that relationship with, senior estimating. I mean, that relationship is a key relationship to have and to continue to foster. And I think in doing that, right, how do I drive costs down both in labor and material? That person should have a full understanding of that. And then how does that trickle then through their organization? So I think that is always a key relationship. And then having those conversations so you actually understand if the trades you're working with have that knowledge of their business. Because I think you're probably selecting in the 80-20 realm because they're performing well in the field. So if they're performing well in the field, they must have some back office disciplines that allow them to be successful. And so understanding how they operate their business, getting close to that business, spending the investment of time there and understanding more about their business, they wouldn't be reluctant to share that. Most trades are open to sharing that because they want to show you how well they're performing in terms of their overall process. So I think being on site with them, going to their shop, seeing how they operate, seeing their processes, that all builds relationship. And it also gives you a great visibility into how they operate. So I really encourage builders to go spend time with their trades in their office, not just in the field, but in the office, and understand their processes so that you can see what they're doing to help run the most efficient back office and shop to prepare the field to be, profitable and productive.
So one of the things that we always preach as we're working with builders is what you just said: get out in the field, get on site. As we're talking about in the purchasing session, we talk a lot. One of the things you just mentioned, and I love it, is go to their shop, go see how they do business, see how organized they are. I always talk about this in negotiating, in the purchasing seminar as well, is when you go to the shop, you can see how well run an operation they are. I can only imagine that most of the trades that you're working with are highly organized trades of choice in their markets, correct?
Yeah, if you go, the best time to go is in the morning, go when the trucks
Yep.
arrive. And if you see people just running to bins, grabbing parts, you might want to look for alternatives. But if you see parts and pieces all bagged up with lot numbers on them and staged in trucks ready to go to your job, then you've picked a really good trade to do business with. So I really like morning time with trades as a great insight into how well they perform and how organized they are for your success on the job.
So I tell this story all the time in the seminar. Anybody who's ever gone to a lumber yard at 6:30 a.m. to pick something up, you're going to see really how they do not operate. Going to my plumber's yard first thing in the morning, going to my HVAC contractor or my electrician, those guys, I like that idea, getting critical, getting on site and see how well they operate. 100% agree with that. I'm going to transition a little bit. We're about 35 minutes into it. I'm going to leave some time for Q&A at the end. Tell us, how me as a builder, how would I bring this up to a trade, looking for that efficiency? Suggesting a software that you operate. How do you see us as builders approaching a trade to actually help get them to be more efficient?
Well, I mean, I understand why most trades operate how they do. There just really aren't tools. I mean, with builders, there's probably 5 to 7 good packages you could pick from, and there's opportunities for builders to, have experience from other people who are coming to your organization that have used different software technologies and platforms and so forth. But with the trades, really, like I say, it comes down to spreadsheets and accounting systems. So it is really challenging for them to run their business that way. So, I think it's a matter of those trades that you do, you highly value, that you actually work with them to understand what they're doing about their systems and encourage them to look at alternative systems that can make them more efficient and lower your cost as a builder. So I think, in many ways, the builders have advanced in their technology. The trades are clearly lagging behind. And they need assistance in that area. And I think as a partner to encourage them in that direction and move them in that direction, the builders have far more experience in systems and processes than the trades do.
It's when you and I talked about this last week, years ago, I would have the purchasing hat on one side and sit with my accounting team on the other side. Because you're right, sometimes their job cost management is at the end of the month. How much labor do I have, and what was my bill at the supply shop? Real quickly, tell us a little bit about the name of your software and how we can get a hold of you. And then Jane, let us know if you have any questions or you have any additional questions from there. But Keith, I'd really like to know. After we talked a couple of weeks ago, I literally had lunch with my HVAC guy. And it's amazing that they're open to this concept, because right now a lot of these guys are struggling as well, right? They're just managing spreadsheets if they're lucky.
Yeah, I had the benefit last week of being on site with a very, probably one of the largest trades in the country. And it's interesting, you'd think, okay, at that point, right, they've got full systems in place for inventory control, job costing, time and labor management. The reality of it is it's just not happening as fast as it should. So there's a definite deficit in the industry. But really, our company, that's what we do. Sierra Data has been doing this. We're 27 years. We started probably in the trade space about 25 years ago. One of the big ways we started is, you guys probably on this call remember the old Nextel push-to-talk phones. Before iPhones were cool, we were actually loading applications for capturing time in the system out in the field. So we would load it on one of the Nextel phones and capture data. And so we've been trying to labor job costs down to that level for 20 plus years. So I think it's an important discipline for your trades to have. The product is known as Track Pro. That's what we internally refer to it as. But SierraData.com is where you will find the product and the services. But there are a number of softwares solutions out in the space that can capture time and labor for you. There's certainly scheduling solutions, but really for us, that's a module in our system. Our core is options management. So we've built everything. We got started back in the days when Dell Web was happening in California. They were highly detailed in options management. And so we had parts and pieces, tub hands move, garages move, water services move. So our core focus is about managing bill of materials, because if you can manage bill of materials, you can inventory, you can purchase, you can job cost. And then our labor comes from our materials. We know the cost of our labor based upon the cost of our materials. So our core is really around options management. So companies that are really disciplined about doing that, and it doesn't have to be somebody with a complex bill of materials. It could be a simple bill of materials, and effectively that, it's still key to the business, and it's key to how they build the builder, how they manage their entire process. Everything runs through that system. So we have about 12 different modules that we offer to the industry, and they range, and their core and focus is all around options management, and then we branch from there.
One of the things I like about this is, as we're trying to, our job as builders is get our costs back down, try to right size those costs. If I'm out to bid, I may be unlucky enough to find a trade or whatever, trying to just get their foot in the door and give me some ridiculously low cost. I like the fact that this is really understanding that cost and what's the total cost and what's the value of that cost, because hiring a bad trade is not going to help anybody. We've all done it. I can't tell you how many times we don't do our upfront homework and hire and do our homework with that trade. The worst thing you have to do is cut a trade off halfway through a job and get rid of them. So I like everything you're talking about. Emma Jane, do we have any costs? If not, I'm going to let Keith say a few more words.
We do have a question. This is from Crosby. He says they've started bidding our guys out, and 95% of the time they have been coming down to the lower price to keep the work. We really only have been doing this with the guys who hit us hardest with increases over the past 2 years. His question, has cement reached a normalization point, or can we expect that to come down at some point? It's so high, he's considered crawl spaces instead of slabs.
That's a fantastic question. And I might have answered that differently 7 days ago, but diesel just went up 70 cents in California over the weekend. So unfortunately, I actually don't know that cement costs have stabilized yet or started to come to the point. I still think that we have a road ahead of us yet as it comes to those costs. That we're going to have to ride out for a while. Again, nobody has a crystal ball, but with what happened to diesel costs last week, I would say that we're going to still see some increases there. And we do see that. We have seen alternative solutions going in place, crawl spaces. We have it going here in Colorado right now. We're seeing more and more where they're not actually putting basements in homes. Colorado is notoriously a place where you're going to put basements, and we have more crawl space homes going in Colorado than we ever have. So it's not a bad strategy, certainly in the short term. But yes, we're definitely seeing that.
Do you have any comments on that as well?
Uh, I would agree. I mean, even though we slowed down quite a bit, there's still a lot of areas where concrete is on allocation. Um, Hearing that diesel just went up. By the way, almost everything that gets delivered to all our job sites in multiple different ways is all off of the diesel. So that's just very crazy to hear. Um, and to your point, I mean, um, even if we're trying to do some performance engineering, I still have to work with the trades that know their cost to get that down.
Mhm.
We talk about this a lot. We walk houses, and it's just insane how much waste we see. Now, the one thing I don't see anymore is copper laying around. It's either that because they pick it up or somebody steals it. So, other than copper, everything else should be stabilizing a little bit.
Yeah.
No, and that's a great point to the gentleman's question. Like, yeah, that's where you go back with relationship with the purchasing, the estimating and purchasing over at the trade you like to do business with and say, hey, we've got to cut cost. What are our alternatives? What would be our price, decrease to do this? What's our labor cost reduction? What's our material cost reduction? And not just on a, hey, rebid me on this, but how is this going to impact things? And do it in a relational type setting. I think that goes a long ways to, especially if you want to keep that trade and you want to keep them, honest in their pricing. I think that's a great way to do that.
Yeah. Well, and on that note, I spoke with Christy from Eliant, and they do surveys, and she mentioned that one of the things that is important to your trade partners is to feel like they're a part of your organization and they're respected. And that's where they're able to actually work with you and they're willing to work with you to find better solutions. So you're just further emphasizing that conversation I had with her. Go ahead.
Yeah, just really quickly on that, if I were to ask a trade, their four top things in the top four would definitely be respect and relationship. Without a doubt, that's always on the top of the list.
Yeah. So I have a question from John. He wants to know what size of trade contractor you work with.
Typically the trades that we work with are usually running, on average, it's 50 to 100 in the field. There are some trades that we might work with that go down to 25 in the field. Again, I think it's more, are they strategic? Are they visionary about their business? Do they really want to drive down cost and scale the business? I mean, the product is really set for them to scale, regionally, nationally, whatever they would hope to do. But our target's 25 and above, typically field employees is what we're looking at.
It makes sense.
I
can only imagine this type of system I can manage better, and just think of all the small volume builders that are trying to manage a business off of spreadsheets. That's just got to be a nightmare from a trade and all those parts and pieces.
Yeah, and especially when you look at centralized pricing, right? What we really drive to do is get centralized pricing from our suppliers. So we typically, just like there's, top two trades you work with, usually it's the top two suppliers you're working with. And from those top two suppliers, am I getting my right prices? But am I getting those in real-time feeds? Do I know daily what my prices are? Are they feeding me new information as my price increases happen? Therefore, if I do need to reprice any of the projects that I'm doing for a builder, I have the data in my system where I can do that, really just, a moment away of getting that new pricing on any plan option they may have.
I think it's going to be critical going forward, trying to compete in the marketplace. We're still fighting mortgage rates, but the market's still there. We just got to get a cost in control.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have another question from John. And what are the top 4 to 5 things trades want in a relationship? You mentioned respect and relationship. What are the other ones that are in that top 4?
On the top list, they want to go straight down the road. They want a release. They want a predictable release schedule and stuff that they can follow so that they can move somebody right next door and keep working. That is the number one thing they want to do. It makes them efficient. They're not bouncing around a subdivision. An example, plumber we've been talking about, if I can have 4 top outs right in a row and I can just send, so when my crew gets 8 hours of 6 hours of work in and they're done, they can move to the house right next door and get a couple hours of top out before they leave. So that's the number one thing. Number 2 thing is really they don't want to chase work orders. They want to be able to, if they have to come and do extra work for you to help you out, they want to be able to create a service order quickly, get agreement on that quickly, and then not have to chase for payment. That effectively, if they have to do extra work, it takes them out of their rhythm to have to do that extra work. As a result, they don't want the process to be difficult, because then, they have to increase their costs to do that work. So they want a quick turnaround on work orders and payment on those work orders. And then probably the one that everybody wants when they're running a business, they want to make a fair margin, right? They want to provide great quality service and actually get a bit of a premium for that too. It's like, if I'm going to be your trade of choice, yeah, I could stand to be 1% or 2% higher next to my peer. But I'm going to do that because I'm going to provide you a great relationship, high quality. So just a fair pricing. Fair pricing is a big deal. Like, if they feel like they're always constantly being beat down on pricing, that's going to be a challenge for them. And that sort of goes side by side with the relationship. I know a builder trade relationship where they pay a premium for this trade, but they never have issues on the job. They move fast, they get it done. And so they're willing to pay a premium every single time because they can count on that trade's performance. And there's never an argument. There's never, there's just not issues. So that's a really big part of it.
So Keith, we put together Builder of Choice, whatever it was, program that we covered in a lot of our seminars. Didn't know you back then. You covered some of our top things. Anybody in management on the call, pay attention. No change orders, okay? Get the change orders out. That kills trades. We've been talking about that for years. The other thing is, when we talk about this a lot, and we'll talk about this in 2 weeks at Managing for Profit in New Orleans, when you're doing your releases in phases, don't have lots 1 through 100, so the trade's got to drive half a mile to the next site. Keith just said it. Do it in order. We haven't built an order since Levitt built Levittown in 1947. Somehow we've gotten away from that. I don't know how we keep getting stupider, but somehow we do. So the builder choice concept, everything we talked about in knowing Keith now for almost 30 days, he's preaching what we preach. This is coming from the trades. So everybody on the call that's in some sort of a position in the operation, take note of this. This is going to help you drive the cost down. So it's pretty simple, okay? Be organized, know the trades. One of the things that my takeaways from Keith is know the right person to go talk to. Be honest about the costs. We always talk about if I beat a trade up too much, they have no incentive to be on my site. So Chuck and Emma have been preaching profit for years. You have to understand that the trade has to make a living and make money. If they're not making money, either because your inefficiencies or you beat them up too much, Keith, what's the opportunity they're going to show up on my job site ever?
Yeah, absolutely.
Money.
They're showing up on job sites, and then all of a sudden your prices are higher, and all of that happens. So it's better to align the relationship so the price aligns with relationship.
Yep.
So I love it. We've always talked about builder choice. Now this is really going to start opening up a whole different thing for us to think about. Is really start getting the trades of choice, finding the smart trades, find the trades that are organized, find the trades that can allocate me the labor. The last 18 months, all we talked about was right sizing schedules. Emma Jane, any last
I do have a
questions?
I do have a question. This is by anonymous. They didn't put their name, but
I know him.
How do you maintain good relationships when you keep going for the least expensive and leave high quality trades out/fired? For a national builder per square foot, it is very important to keep it down. My second question, how is it possible to have 30% price difference between two HVAC companies with the exact same specs?
Oh, that is such a great.
How much time do we have? Oh my God.
We need another hour on this call. That was a great question.
So the fans asked her is, if you had to do everything that Keith just talked about, you'll find out why there's 30% difference. The reason why there's 30% is one guy is trying to buy the business and tag you later on, and the other guy doesn't really want to work or heard you're a jackwad and raise the prices. Now Keith will give you the more detailed answer.
Well, that's exactly what we had a meeting last week where that's the exact same thing is happening. And this trade keeps they want the business, and they're going to keep lowering and lowering their number until they get in the door. And then once they get in the door, they're going to start raising their number because there's just no way. In fact, the trade that was the right number that I work with went back to the builder and just opened the books and said, hey, this is where the numbers are. So they're trying to buy that business. If they're too low, they're trying to buy the business. If they're too high, they don't want to do the business. So that's really why we see such a, I mean, could they be 3,000 because they don't know their numbers? It could be, but it's more than likely the prior. And then on the low cost one, I mean, I think that's a great question. Like, low cost is really hard to determine. Low cost, what is the level of back charges? What is the level of change orders? What is the level and quality and speed of work, and what that overall does to the cost of doing business? What is the percent? Would you take an electrician for 1,000 more, one electrician over the other? That would probably be hard to justify, but there's times where that $1,000 higher electrician is going to move your job so efficiently, without issues, be on time, perform on time, that the overall cost of doing business could actually be lower by taking that other electrician.
Yep.
So the other thing to add to that, Keith, is a lot of times what I'm talking about is what's the overall cost? What's the best value?
Right.
I want to dig into it. So we as builders, we have to actually justify it. If I've got a framer is $3,000 more, it's hard to justify that. So if I have all this information and I can actually get the overall cost, how fast are they going to work? What's their quality? I have to know all these things. Okay. And what Keith's talking about is I want to find that trade of choice. And I don't want to bring somebody in who's going to last 2-3 homes and move on. We teach all the time that a lot of times that 20% trade, I'll give you a couple houses. Say, it's electrician, you're 1,000 high. I know working for me, you can do the job for less. They won't come in unless they do. So a lot of times what I do is I'll promise them I'll give you a couple houses, and then we'll relook at it. And if you follow everything Keith's talking about, if they do a couple houses for us, can we right size the cost? And I want to make sure they're making money, but I don't want to pay that 30% premium because they really didn't want to work for me.
Yep.
Great point. Yeah. And does the trade, another just point to think through is, how is the trade's overhead cost moving? How do they move with scale? If effectively my business is suffering and I've lost a bunch of business, my overhead is extremely high right now compared relatively to my revenues. So do we have companies that are running 20% overhead? Are they looking at a gross margin of 35%? What are their numbers that they're really shooting for? Are they going to be transparent with that? Possibly not. But getting to the point where you understand what the real material cost and labor, do we know that they're making 12% profit? Do we know that they're making 15? Those are the kind of things, as you get closer to those relationships, you'll have a better understanding if you're, really what kind of money that they're really making, and is it a fair margin that they're making?
Agreed.
Well, thank you guys. We are coming up to the top of the hour, so I'm going to cut us off, but I do want to let everybody know, if you want to know more about what we do here. Hold on, where'd my screen go? And how you can learn more about these topics. You can visit us at one of our in-person seminars this fall. We have our superintendent's job, frontline manager, October 5th through the 7th in New Orleans. Managing for Profit is the following Monday through Wednesday, the 9th through 11th in New Orleans as well. And then we also have our production management seminar that's coming up in November. We will cover in depth some of the concepts we were talking about today, and more concepts that are related to becoming a builder of choice at these seminars. It really gives you an opportunity to understand how to improve systems, processes, and procedures in your organization so you can work towards becoming that builder of choice. So if you're able, we would love to see you in person at one of our fall seminars. We also have our builder partnerships program. So if you're working with any of these manufacturers that I have up on the screen today, please contact us here. We can help you with some of your pricing as well. It's a great opportunity to get some rebates. We had a builder that we were working with this last week in our builder group meeting, and he was like, I am the master at rebates, and one of the things I do is I send all my closings to builder partnerships, and they take care of all the ones that are on this list that he works with. I think and it's not just ours, but he does make a significant amount of money in rebates. It makes a big difference on your bottom line. Don't forget that we have a great consulting team here at Shinn Consulting as well. So feel free to contact me or one of our consultants. I can put you in touch with them so that you can get more information from that. And it looks like I have 2 more quick questions. Oh,
yes, we will be eating beignets in New Orleans. If that's the question.
Beignets and really good coffee. Yes. So our question is, to be successful, what margin should a trade make? And then another person wrote, I've attended production management, and it's one of the best seminars I've ever had. Thank you so much for sharing. I love that seminar. It's so fun to go to right here in Denver, Colorado.
Great.
So what is to answer the first question, what's a successful margin?
I think a successful total margin, you're looking at 12 to 15 for a trade is where they'd want to be. So if they're running a 20% overhead, they're probably bidding you somewhere in the 40% gross margin kind of number, with hoping to get around the 35. And again, that all changes when things tighten down. When things were, moving fast and furious, there were probably, people that were trades that were getting in excess of 20% total profit. But, that 15% sweet spot is probably where the number should be for most trades.
So for all you Shinn followers, sound a little familiar? It's pretty much what Chuck Emmer preached.
I hope so.
I didn't even know that. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm
We don't
looking
do
forward to being in New Orleans. I'm looking forward to meeting everyone.
Yeah. Yep. It'll be
So
great to have you.
If it was the production class from last fall, that group was out of control last year. We had a very good session. Everybody bonded and had a good time.
That's great.
Yeah, that's the great thing about our seminars, is that everybody really connects, and you get a whole new group of people that you can connect with across the country to ask questions. And the best thing is a lot of the people that are coming to the class are dealing with similar things that you're dealing with. So you get a little bit of idea of how different people are solving the problem, and you get some different perspectives. So it's really neat to be able to do that. So anyways, with that, Keith, thank you so much for joining us today. It was so awesome to have the perspective from the trades and hear a lot of what you're saying is validating a lot of the things that we've been preaching for years, but it's better to have it come from the horse's mouth than from us just saying it and just hoping everybody believes what we're saying. So it's great to have you confirm a lot of what we're saying and add some extra perspective and get a good idea of what the trades are going through and managing their own businesses. So that is very helpful. And hopefully we can make sure that as builders, we learn to maintain and improve those relationships to make the industry itself better overall.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And thank you if you're listening to us on our podcast. Thanks for listening. Have a great day, and we will see you soon.
See you guys.